It began the moment the pendant vanished into the well. The next morning, Daniel woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The wrong kind. No birds, not one. The trees beyond the fields stood still, branches untouched by wind, but every last bird had vanished overnight. He checked the coop, chickens huddled in the corners, eyes wide, feathers ruffled. They hadn't laid a single egg. The dogs refused to leave the house. The cows stared at nothing, as if listening to something only they could hear. By noon, the crops began wilting. Not from heat. The air was cool, overcast, but the plants were dying. Fast. First the cucumbers curled into themselves, then the tomatoes split open on the vine. The cornstalks leaned as if bowing to something underground. Daniel crouched near a potato row and touched the soil. Cold. Freezing cold, in the middle of spring. The bear hadn't moved all morning. It lay beside the well like a sentry, eyes never blinking, breaths shallow. But it had stopped eating. Not a bite of food had touched its mouth since the pendant fell. Instead, it began digging. Not wild digging, methodical. It used its claws like tools, carving away the earth around the well, not at it, creating a wide ring of exposed stone. Preparing. That was the only word Daniel could think of. Preparing. Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He packed rope, a flashlight, a knife, and the letter from his grandfather, tied the rope to the base of the nearby oak tree and looped it around himself. He stood over the mouth of the well, looking down into the darkness below. The bear stood nearby, staring. It didn't stop him. It just watched. He took one last breath and lowered himself down. The stones were slick, cold, and ancient. Vines had crept through the cracks, but deep below, those vines turned dry, crumbled at his touch. The air thickened with each foot. After 10 meters, he reached a wide ledge. Beneath him, there was no more wall, just a massive carved surface. A sealed gate. Ancient, cracked, but still whole. Symbols covered every inch of it, some matching his dreams, some completely alien. His flashlight flickered. He tapped it. That's when he heard it. A hum. Low, faint, but unmistakable. Something was humming behind the gate. The sound wasn't mechanical. It felt alive, like breath echoing through a distant tunnel. He reached toward the gate and a vision hit him. He wasn't in the well. He was standing in a great forest, long before roads, before fences. Tribes in furs danced around a fire, chanting, their eyes glowing with blue light. In the center of the clearing stood a bear, taller, darker, covered in markings that shimmered under the moonlight. Its eyes were human. A woman stepped forward, young, cloaked, holding something high. The pendant. Only it wasn't cracked. It blazed with light. She pressed it against the bear's chest and both of them glowed. She whispered something. Daniel couldn't understand the language, but he knew the meaning. You are the seal. You are the memory. You are the last wall between the darkness and the world. The bear bowed its head. Behind them, the forest split open, and from beneath the earth came a howl so deep it shook the trees. The tribe formed a circle. Light shot from their palms into the pendant, into the bear, and into the ground. The gate began to form. The darkness screamed. Daniel gasped, stumbling back in the present. The flashlight slipped from his hand and clattered against the stone. The vision faded, but not the understanding. The bear, it wasn't just a creature. It had been a guardian, chosen, bound, and the pendant. It wasn't decoration. It was the key, a living seal tied to the guardian's life force. So long as it remained near, the darkness stayed sealed. Now it was gone. The humming behind the gate grew louder. When Daniel climbed out of the well, his hands trembled. The bear was waiting, but it had changed. Its fur was darker, richer, no longer dull and gray. Its posture was taller, stronger. There was something fierce returning to its eyes. Intelligence. Awareness. as if every memory it had lost had come rushing back. It looked at Daniel not as its owner, but as its witness. Eliza was the first to notice the change. She stepped back when the bear passed the kitchen window and said nothing for a long time. That afternoon, they heard the shouting. 4 trucks pulled up near the property fence. Daniel stepped outside to find half the village standing at the edge of his land. Pitchforks, rifles, torches, just like something out of a cursed fairy tale. One of the men stepped forward. Carl Tenley, the mill owner, always looking for trouble. "You disturbed it, didn't you?" Carl barked. "The earth's gone sour. Crops are dying. My daughter hasn't spoken since yesterday. Just points to the woods and screams." Daniel raised his hands. "I didn't mean to." "You let it loose," another woman hissed. "The old bear, the guardian. My grandfather told me stories. He said if it ever came back, it meant the seal was breaking." "You've cursed the land," another shouted. "We won't let you doom the whole valley." Someone cocked a rifle. The bear stepped into view. It didn't growl, didn't bare its teeth. It stood beside Daniel, taller, calmer, like a shield. The townspeople froze, and then the ground beneath them shuddered again. A low, pulsing sound, deep, unnatural, like something vast waking from a long, angry dream. It didn't come from the woods. It came from the well. The bear's head snapped toward it. It didn't wait. With a burst of speed Daniel had never seen, the bear charged. "Wait!" Daniel shouted, running after it. But the bear was already at the edge, and without hesitation it leapt in, disappearing into the darkness below. From the depths of the well came a cracking sound. Stone splitting. Then a roar, but not the bear. This sound was deeper, older, twisted. The humming turned into a scream. The seal was breaking, and the guardian had gone in, alone. Daniel didn't hesitate. He wrapped the rope around his waist again and plunged into the well, the echo of that unholy scream still rattling the stones. The air thickened as he descended, colder, heavier, charged with something ancient and terrifying. His flashlight shook in his grip, casting shadows that shifted and moved on their own. At the bottom, the gate was no longer whole. It had split apart like rotten wood, revealing a vast underground chamber beyond, a cavern so massive it swallowed sound. Glowing veins ran along the walls like pulsing lifeblood, blue and white, casting flickering light across the rock. He stepped through the shattered threshold. There it was, the darkness. Not a monster, not a form. A presence. A swirling, undulating mass of black mist, stretching from floor to ceiling, moving like smoke underwater. Faces flickered in and out of its surface, screaming, weeping, silent. Its voice wasn't a growl or a roar. It was whispers, millions of them, and in front of it stood the bear. Silent, still, a silhouette between the light and the void. It didn't move as Daniel entered, didn't turn to him. It simply stood there, its body trembling as the darkness loomed above. The mist recoiled, then surged forward, like it remembered the bear, like it hated it. Then the bear began to glow, not with light, but memory. Moments danced across its fur like reflections on water, visions of the tribe, the firelight, the pendant, the ceremony. The woman who had once held the necklace now appeared in full, tears in her eyes, whispering words of trust, of duty. Daniel fell to his knees. He understood. The bear hadn't always been a bear. Once it had been a guardian spirit, a protector of balance, a being of both memory and might, chosen by a sacred tribe to watch over a sealed evil. But something had gone wrong. It had failed. The seal had weakened under its watch, and as punishment, or perhaps as penance, it had been cast into the physical world, bound into the body of a beast, stripped of its power, of its past, left to wander the earth in silence, waiting for the chance to restore what it had lost. When Daniel bought the bear, he hadn't just rescued an animal. He had given the guardian one last chance. The darkness surged forward with a shriek, lashing at the bear with tendrils of smoke. The bear stood its ground, but it staggered. Its glow flickered. The mist circled, struck again. Daniel knew what he had to do. He reached into his coat, pulling out the pendant. It had returned to him. Whether by fate or the bear's silent guidance, he couldn't say. It was heavier now, hot to the touch, humming with energy. The moment he touched it, it glowed with a pale blue fire. "Hey!" he shouted into the chamber. The bear turned, its eyes, those human eyes, locked with his. He threw the pendant. It sailed across the space between them, and as it touched the bear's chest, the world changed. The bear roared, not in pain, not in anger, but in release. It was a roar that shook the cavern, tore through the darkness, and reached into the very bones of the earth. It carried grief, yes, but also purpose, destiny, forgiveness. The shadows screamed, recoiling from the light erupting from the bear's chest. The veins in the cave walls brightened until the entire chamber blazed with radiant memory. The bear rose, taller, stronger, radiant. For one final moment it was no longer a beast. It was a being of light. It stepped forward, placing its paws against the shattered gate. The stones lifted from the ground, pulled by unseen force, returning to their ancient formation. The carvings reappeared. The seal began to close. The darkness wailed, shrinking, desperate. It struck at the bear one last time. The light flared. The gate closed. Silence. Then the ground began to tremble. Daniel ran. He didn't look back. The cavern cracked, stones falling around him. The path to the well narrowed with each heartbeat. He leapt over a collapsing ledge, climbed the rope 2 steps at a time. The wind howled behind him. Not wind, something worse, but he made it. Just as the rope snapped beneath him, he clawed his way out of the well and collapsed on the grass. Behind him, the well sealed. Stone grinded against stone. A final puff of blue smoke escaped from its mouth. Then nothing. The sun rose over the hills, bathing the farm in golden light. The birds returned. Days passed. No one spoke of what had happened. Not the villagers, not Eliza, not Daniel. The farm began to heal. The animals calmed. The crops, once blighted and curling, stood tall again, greener than ever. The sky seemed brighter, the air lighter, but the bear never came back. Daniel searched the woods for days, called into the trees, left food, nothing. He checked the well every morning. Silence. Until the 7th dawn. Daniel opened the front door and froze. There, on the doorstep, lay the pendant. Cold, quiet, whole, and beside it, a single, massive paw print in the dust. No claw marks, no mess, just one print. Goodbye. Daniel picked up the pendant with shaking hands. He held it to his chest. It no longer glowed. Its duty was done. The guardian had returned to memory. Final line. He bought an old bear out of pity, but what he really brought home was a legend waiting for redemption.